Well, hello there and welcome to Travels with Geordie. If this is your first visit, my name is Peter Knowles and I live on a classic wooden motor cruiser in Victoria, British Columbia, along with the loving memory of my pup Geordie, all the while fixing it up for some pretty ambitious cruising. If that's the sort of thing that you might find interesting, please consider sticking around and subscribing. Love to have you. Well, I can say we're moving right along, getting lots of things done and making some real headway on that bulkhead. It won't be long now. Anyway, let's jump back in time and check out what we've been up to. As always, I'd like to thank all my viewers and especially my Patreon and PayPal supporters who have been so supportive and keep the show going. Good morning, swans. All right then, speaking of templating, let's do a little more. I need to send some templates to the glass shop. So I'm going to use this piece of 1/4-inch masonite and trace out the glass and cut it out, and hopefully we can get a decent coat back on some windows. They won't be cheap. Oh, it's windy. Wow, we have a gale here today, 35 knots. Yowza. Okay, so it's a little bit underneath, but I think I can trace this just fine. And lo and behold, let's just make sure we keep track of them. Starboard, amidships, and port. And let's do some cutting. Splendid. Beauty! And here we have what I believe to be my final coat of primer back here. Fair, sand, prime, sand, fair. Anyway, it's relatively fair. What it needs to be is done. Well, I do believe it's possible. I have finished fairing and prepping for final paint, which means we can then install the sill, and then the bulkhead. Is a few steps to it. This is relatively fair. I'm really quite pleased with it. Okay, wait for that to dry. There's always lots to do. And welcome back to the shed. Well, carrying on to try and make sure I can get this painted soon so that I can get this installed. Of course, there's a couple of steps to get to there. The primer is on and it's dry, so I'm going to sand the primer right now and get a finish coat, the first finish coat on today, and hopefully at least that much of the second finish coat tomorrow, so we can set the, you can see the steps that happen in. Anyway, we're very, very fortunate that the sun is back out. It has been raining non-stop for the last little while, so this is good news, and the temperature is up just enough that this paint is at least going to cure. We'll also get the both side windows repainted, and then we can carry on with, yes, the glorious, glorious mahogany. Okay, sanding first. It's always sanding first. I'm gonna pull and replace this tape so it doesn't get all balled up as I sand. And good morning. Well, this is going really, really well. Look at all this glorious shininess. Yeah, we're all done here, painted and ready to install the sill, which of course will be incredibly rewarding to see some nice wood come back into here. And that'll have to be done in 2 stages because of the way I'm going to bed it, but more on that in a little bit. Anyway, also very happy to say, well, how glorious it is outside because it's been really, really cold. And one of the things about it being cold is it's getting harder to paint. Thank goodness we're done with anything to do with epoxy. So I just happen to be repainting the 2 sliding windows. Got to get one more coat on these today and then we can get them back on, which is good. And then we're done with all those sorts of things. Well, with the exception of varnish, but it's not quite so sensitive. But look what's here! These are the glass windows for the bulkhead, which I was able to get made up in the city the other day. So super excited about that. We'll be putting them in today. Go. Oh, beauty. And good morning. Yes, well, the boat is turned around and this is a big day. Yesterday we had a few distractions, so couldn't get to actually installing any of the stuff back here, but we're ready for it today and I'm super pleased with it. But I'm going to make a small modification to the sill before it goes on. Let me show you. Alright, if you've been following along, you'll recognize what I call the sill, which is basically the frame that the bulkhead is going to sit in. And it sits against the curve of the cabin top and fits in against the cabin sides there. And the actual bulkhead will fit in this rabbet here. Now, this edge here is what sits against the boat. In other words, the deck is coming out here. But what I'm going to do to make sure I get a really good seal, instead of just bedding this down, I'm actually going to put a chamfer on this edge, all the way around and up here. And what that'll do is it'll give me a much larger void to put sealant into. And so that if there's any flex here, that larger volume of sealant can deal with more of the flex. If you have a very thin layer of sealant, what happens is if there's any motion, it'll pull that sealant off the deck because it can't stretch if it's really thin. Obviously, the larger the block of sealant, the more stretch it's going to have because it has a certain percentage of strength by volume. So anyway, that's what I'm going to do there. The option would be to actually cut a square small rabbet in here, and then in the back of it put a bond breaker, in other words tape, so that it wouldn't be a 3-sided bond. But it's starting to overthink it a bit much. I think the chamfer is going to do what I want to do. So that just means router work. Let's get to it. All right, here we go. Fabulous. Okay, so I'm gearing up to bed down the sill onto the boat, onto the deck and the inside of the cabin sides. And to me, there are two caulking or sealant lines when you bed something like that. One is to bed it basically to give it a uniform support. When all the screws go in, have a material that squeezed between the imperfections of the sill and the deck and the cabin side to provide uniform support for it. But it is not the sealant. It's not what's going to keep the water out. And then afterwards, after it's all down and screwed and it's not going to move again, I will put another bead of sealant in that little chamfer I just showed you cutting. Now, there are two different uses of goo in a tube, and I'm going to use different goo in a tube for each of them. Now, I am not affiliated with Sika and Sika Flex products in any way. They happen to be what I use, largely because they're what my chandlery carries. I was a huge fan of 291 for years, and I've used it in lots of places. It's very cheap, and it's really pretty good. I'd pay about $12 a tube for it. I've recently become a big fan of 295 UV. UV stands for ultraviolet, and that fills in a really big gap in 291, because anywhere I've used 291 where the sun gets at it, it has failed in short order, like a year or two. So I use this as a bedding material, as a bonding material for certain places where it's not going to get the sun, and I still use it for caulking paying seams and planking below the waterline where it's under paint. I mean, the sun is never ever getting there. I think this is a great product. There's lots of uses for it. However, in the sun, not so good. Pay 2 to 3 times the price for 295 UV. Now, this is not really meant to replace 291. This is actually a glazing sealant. This is used largely to install windows, plastic windows. It's rated for, I don't have my glasses on, but it's rated for organic glass. What that means is plastic. It sticks really well to organic glass, which some sealants don't. However, it also sticks to regular glass, which is great, because shortly we're going to use it to glaze in the windows in the bulkhead. But I also use this anywhere where the sun's going to get at it. And so far, even though I only have a year and a half, almost 2 years of experience with it, it has not failed at all. So awesome stuff. Both are sandable, and that's crucial for the work I do, because often when you're working with wood, you're putting it somewhere where you want to sand it out later. So we're going to load the gun up with the 291 for bedding and bed that sill in. You'll see I've reinstalled the chimney for the propane fireplace because it has been chilly enough to need it the last little while. Okay, so I'm going to lay in this 291 as bedding. Okay. Right there. Okay. And now, this had originally been held, the original sill had been held with carriage bolts through to the inside, which frankly I consider significant overkill. Basically, a few strong fasteners, I believe, is substandard to a lot of smaller fasteners spread over a larger area, especially where movement between the two pieces is a risk. So I'm really feeling a lot better about lots of wood screws. Okay, I'm going to put a few more, but I can do it with the clamps removed. Fantastic. And now to screw the actual sill down. Excellent. Awesome. The reason I put my finger under as I'm driving it home is that I can feel it closing down a little bit, and I don't want to pull any harder than I have to because I don't want to risk stripping the threads of the screw, but I also want to make sure it closes down all the way. So that is working out really well. Now in a perfect world, I would have loved to have not had any squeeze out, but it's a small price to pay for making sure I have really good bedding. A little acetone will clean this up nicely. And for the final clean out, I just wrap the acetone soaked paper towel over a spreader and really get in there. There we go. Let's fold that over and do the other side. I'll explain in a minute why it's so important I get this perfectly clean. There, good enough. And here's that explanation. Gosh, hope you can hear me. The previously mentioned Secaflex 295 UV, fantastic product, fantastic adhesion. But part of what makes that adhesion so exceptional, let me introduce to you Sika Multi-Primer Marine. This tiny little jar, I believe it's 30 milliliters, in Canada is about $48. However, apparently, and it's certainly been my experience, priming with this stuff before sealing with this stuff, oh, that's the biz. So that's why I really had to make sure that that seam wasn't corrupted with any other material. In fact, I'm even going to sand it ever so slightly, because that will also sand the paint down below ever so slightly in this joint, because I am putting a tremendous amount of confidence in this seal, because everything moving forward is about keeping fresh water out of the boat, especially this nice new work. All right, we're gonna let that acetone blow off a little bit, but then we're gonna use this and this for something different. Well, yes, I'm sure you remember this, and what we're going to do with that 295 is glaze in the windows, because I'd much rather glaze them horizontal on the bench than vertical, crouching on the aft cabin. However, there's a couple of things I need to do before I glaze these, and the first of them is confirm that it's still a perfect fit against the sill. Of course, I scribed it, tested it, and fine-tuned it against the sill when it was clamped in place, but now that it's screwed down in its final position, there may be small deviations in the shape of the bottom. The other thing I'm going to do is I'm going to put that same chamfer on the bulkhead that I just put on the sill all the way around the edge here, because this also needs to be sealed to the sill to reduce or to absolutely stop any possibility of water migrating into the boat. Okay, first steps first. And there we go, an absolute perfect fit. I am so pleased, especially up here where it comes here. I'll bring you over to have a look. I was really concerned that this area here where it wraps around would be a bit of a difficulty, but it's just absolutely perfect. I'm really, really happy with that detail. Okay, now we can put the glass in. Actually, no, we can't. A couple of steps before I can lay the glass in, and that's to route that same chamfer that will hold that nice big bead of sealant in there. Plus, I want to pre-drill all the countersunk holes that are going to be for the screws that will attach this to the sill, just so that much easier to lay them all out here nice and tidy, and then just finish them off once it's in place. Of course, all those screws will be bunged and sanded flush. Fantastic. So just making up a bit of a handheld jig to draw the line for the screws. Basically a little wiper for the inside and a piece of 3/8 mahogany and the pencil. And so that line will end up just where I want it. Right there. 26, 18, 10, and 2. Not to forget the top. Row of screws across here as well into the last deck beam of the house cabin. What I have to do first is go measure how far down is an appropriate amount. Let's go have a look. Let me say about an inch, and the deck is already an inch below here, so we're going to shoot for 2 inches down. Handy dandy piece of blocking gives me pretty close to 2 inches. Okay. $10 and 2. Now when you pre-drill a hole for a fastener, you're very likely to create a little bit of blowout on the opposite side, quite a substantial amount in some cases. Now if you leave that, that will create a barrier to making a close connection. So I go around afterwards and give it just a little zing with the countersink bit here, just to clean that up. Excellent. Okay, is it finally time to put the glass in? Honestly, I don't even know. Let me think about it for a second. I think it is. I think. Okay. Yeah. All right. Now this is another place where we're going to use that primer, because we're going to use the same 295 to bed these windows in. So I'm first going to prime the whole rabbit with that super primer or whatever it is. Yeah, I think the simplest way I can get this primer on here relatively quickly and neatly is with just a piece of paper towel. Okay, so yeah, let's go. Now you'd say, well, we don't want contaminants back in that bottle, Peter, but I think I'll cope with that. Oh, for crying out loud. Okay, let's mop that up after. Okay, let's go around here, around here, around here. Might have been the best way to just make a little pile of it somewhere. Perfect. I think that worked quite well, other than the puddle down here, but I think I'll be able to cope with that. Now this stuff dries really fast. I suppose it might have been prudent to test fit these before I primed them. Well, let's see how this goes. I will wash these with acetone before I do the final install. Fits. Woohoo! Now I've cut off a very small tip because I want to lay just the smallest bead in here because I don't want any of it blowing out into the inside. I don't want to clean that up. So really I just want to make sure that I have the slightest little bit in, and then I can fill any voids from above after. All right then. All right, here goes nothing. Oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah, oh yeah. Okay, so all I really want to do is squeegee it around a little and make sure that it actually making contact everywhere. Okay. Now we're moving into newfound territory. Let's see if this direct glazing is going to be miserable or not. I have a glazing tool. Well, not a glazing tool. I have a caulking tooling tool, but I've used one with a very large radius. So I think I'm going to be able to basically cut that flat on the glass and up against the wood, and it'll create a ridge up over the wood, which I can easily razor off after it cures, and then sand. Let's see how this works. I'm going to do 2 passes. One to drive any more sealant down in the gap, and then another to fill the fillet. It's awfully tempting to use my thumb. Okay, so now I'm going to cut a little more off the tip so that I can fill that bead in with a little more material to make the actual cove. All right, let's try out this tool. I think it's going to be fine. Well, hello and welcome to the Travels with Geordie Beer of the Week, coming to you this week from the cozy wheelhouse of MV Zephyrus. I'm shooting this late and it is cold outside. Let's get straight to the beer. Really looking forward to this. A fine fellow from Lund came by, Jim Bradley, and brought me a couple of these Big Yikes double IPAs from Twin City Brewing in Port Alberni. So I've been really looking forward to these. It's been quite a while that I've been hanging on to them and haven't had a chance to try them. So thank you ever so much, Jim. Let's have a go. Well, we're down to the wire. I apologize. I have fallen behind again. As of the moment of shooting this episode, I can look up at the bulkhead installed. I won't show you yet because that would ruin the fun, wouldn't it? But the good news is we're pretty much done, and I'm going to catch up as fast as I can. Perhaps another bonus episode. Who knows? Cheers. Oh my gosh. This is in the top 5. Top 5. Big Yikes. Double IPA. Oh my gosh. From Twin Cities. Twin City? Twin City? I haven't got my glasses on. I believe it is. Awesome. That is absolutely delicious. Okay. I have to fire up my phone again because I am using it as a notebook. Man, that was good. To be able to do my paperwork this week because don't even have a board this time. I would love to award a Travels with Geordie t-shirt to last Wednesday's midweek winner, and his name is Rick LeBlond. So Rick LeBlond, get a hold of me and we'll make sure you get your Travels with Geordie t-shirt. Congratulations. And with no new supporters coming on in the last little while, I'll jump straight to the word of the week. And it being November the 11th, 2022, the word will be remember, lest we forget. But in Victoria, British Columbia, sorry Charlie, it's just not going to work, is it?